Chrono Wars, Endgame. Chapter 1. The invasion. The dark void of space loomed above the planet, the stars marring the endless blackness. A lone spaceship appeared, blotting out the stars with its gargantuan size. The ship was unlike anything the planet had ever seen. It was massive, its hull smooth and black, glistening in the light of the distant sun. Fear gripped the inhabitants of the planet as they watched the ship descend. The ship landed in a deafening boom, the impact shaking the ground beneath the feet of the people. Soldiers rushed to the landing site, armed to the teeth, preparing themselves for the worst. They formed a circle around the ship, unsure of what to expect. They watched, anxiously, as the ship's ramp slowly extended outwards. Suddenly, a horde of reptilian aliens poured forth from the ship. They were vicious and brutal, their armor reflecting the sunlight, and their weapons spitting fire. They had come for a sinister purpose, annihilating anything and anyone that stood in their way. The soldiers fought back fiercely, their weapons blazing, but the aliens were too powerful. They had advanced technology and sheer numbers on their side. The soldiers were quickly overwhelmed, their ranks dwindling as the fight dragged on. A young soldier, named Max, raced through the fight, his heart beating so hard he feared it would burst from his chest. He was running towards the only hope the planet had of survival. The secret weapon that his team had uncovered the previous day, a weapon that could destroy the alien invaders. Max burst into the underground bunker where the weapon was stored, and quickly made his way to its control console. His fingers flew across the buttons, desperately trying to power up the weapon as the sound of the battle above grew louder and closer. The ground shook as the alien horde moved closer, their weapons raised high, ready to fire. Max felt his heart racing as he tried to push the final button, praying that the weapon would work. A beam of pure energy shot out from the weapon, striking the alien horde with a deafening blast, tearing them to shreds. The planet was saved, but at a great cost. Max knew that the aliens would return, and that next time, they would be ready for the planet's defenses. Max emerged from the bunker, his heart heavy with the weight of what had just happened. He watched as the spaceship, with just a handful of aliens escaping, blasted off into the dark void of space. The planet was safe, for now, but he knew that the next invasion would be even more brutal than the last. Chapter 2. The time portal. Years had passed since the invasion, and the planet had managed to recover from the destruction wrought by the alien attack. It was a time of peace, though the people still remembered the horror of the invasion, and remained vigilant, always watching the skies for signs of another attack. Max had risen through the ranks, becoming a respected leader in the military. He had never forgotten the feeling of helplessness he had felt during the invasion, and had dedicated his life to ensuring the safety of his people. But even he was not prepared for what was to come next. One evening, while on patrol with his team, Max stumbled upon a strange anomaly in the woods on the outskirts of the city. It was a shimmering portal, hovering in midair, and pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Max knew instinctively that it was not of this world, and that it posed a great risk to the safety of the planet. He called in a team to investigate, and together they approached the portal. As they drew closer, they could see strange symbols etched into its surface, and could feel a wave of energy emanating from it. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Max and his team quickly realized that this portal was not just a significant discovery. It was a gateway to another time. As they peered into the portal, they could see a world beyond, a world that was both familiar and foreign. Without warning, the portal began to suck them in, and before they knew it, they were inside a strange, alien world. They found themselves surrounded by towering structures, covered in pulsing lights, and inhabited by unfamiliar creatures that were both hostile and hospitable. Max and his team quickly adapted to their new environment, learning the intricacies of this new world, and mastering the strange technology that was available to them. But their mission never wavered. They were here to find a way back to their own time and world. As they explored the vast expanse of this new world, they stumbled upon a group of scientists who had been studying the same portal for some time. With the help of the scientists, Max and his team were able to uncover the secrets of this portal, and were able to find a way back to their own time and world. But as they made their way back through the portal, they realized that something was wrong. The portal had destabilized, and they were being sent hurtling through time and space. They held on for dear life, struggling to maintain their grip on reality as they hurtled towards an unknown destination. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they landed with a thud, back in their own time and world. They had succeeded, but they all knew that they had ventured into the unknown, and had opened themselves up to dangers that they could never have imagined. Chapter 3. The time heist. Max and his team had barely had time to catch their breath after their wild adventure through the time portal before they were thrust into yet another dangerous mission. This time, they were tasked with stopping a group of rogue time travelers who had devised a plan to steal a valuable artifact from the past, one that had the power to change the course of history. The team had no time to waste. They knew that if these rogue time travelers succeeded, the consequences would be disastrous. They scrambled to gather the technology and resources needed to make their own time jump, hoping to reach the artifact before the thieves could get their hands on it. As they arrived in the past, they witnessed the chaos and destruction wrought by the rogue time travelers. They had traveled back to a critical moment in time, and had already begun their heist. Max and his team had to move quickly. They split up to cover more ground, each taking a different approach to the situation. Max and two other team members navigated through the chaos, trying not to draw attention to themselves as they searched for the artifact. They knew that they had to retrieve it before it fell into the hands of the rogue time travelers. As they finally located the artifact at the center of the heist, they realized that they were not alone. The rogue time travelers had followed them there, and a fierce battle broke out. Max and his team fought valiantly, doing everything in their power to prevent the artifact from falling into the wrong hands. The battle waged on for what felt like an eternity, the sound of blaster fire echoing through the corridors. At one point, Max was separated from his team members, and found himself cornered by one of the rogue time travelers. But Max was not so easily defeated. With a fierce determination, he fought back bravely, using all of his training to stay alive. As the battle drew to a close, Max emerged victorious, the artifact safe in his hands. He breathed a sigh of relief as he looked around at the destruction wrought by the heist, realizing how close they had come to disaster. Max and his team traveled back to the present, the artifact securely in their possession. They knew that their mission was not yet complete, and that there were still those who would stop at nothing to steal it. But they were ready for whatever came their way. They had saved the course of history, and they would do it again if necessary. Chapter 4. The Time Paradox. Max and his team had returned from their successful mission, but something had changed. They could feel it in their bones, a shift in reality that they could not explain. It was as if they had created a rip in time, and the consequences were beginning to manifest in unexpected ways. At first, the changes were small. Little things that they noticed but could not explain. People who they remembered being alive were suddenly dead, and vice versa. Historical events that they had studied in great detail were now different, altered in ways that they could not understand. As the changes continued to mount, Max and his team began to realize that they had created a paradox, a tear in the fabric of time that threatened the very existence of their world. They had saved history, but in doing so, they had altered it. And now they were paying the price. The team was frantic, trying to find a way to reverse the damage that they had done. But it seemed that the more they tried to fix things, the worse they became. They began to realize that there was no easy solution to the problem that they had created. Finally, after long hours of research and experimentation, they had discovered a way to undo the damage that they had done. It would require a risky jump back in time, to the moment just before the artifact had been stolen. There, they would have to make a choice that could alter the course of history yet again. The team prepared for the jump back, their nerves on edge as they all knew that the stakes were high. As they jumped back in time, they found themselves back in the midst of the chaos of the heist, but this time, they had a new plan. Max and his team sprung into action, working together to not only retrieve the artifact but to also prevent the heist from happening in the first place. They played a delicate game, manipulating events in just the right way to ensure that history would play out as it was supposed to. As they returned to their present, they waited expectantly, wondering if their plan had worked. It was not immediate, but with time, they began to see the changes. The world was returning to normal, the paradox slowly fading away. They had saved their world from the brink of destruction. But the team also knew that they would never forget the lesson that they had learned. They knew that they had the power to shape history, but that it was a power that came with great responsibility. And they would never again take that responsibility lightly. Chapter 5. The Xalaxian Queen. The years passed, and Max and his team had become the foremost experts on time travel, trusted and respected by all. It was as if the universe had tasked them with the responsibility of protecting history itself. But their skills and determination were about to be put to the ultimate test. The Xalaxians had returned, and this time, they had brought with them a powerful new weapon. They had created a virus that could infect entire planets, wiping out all life in its path. The team knew that they had to find a way to stop this weapon before it was too late. Max and his team studied the virus, analyzing its components, and testing ways to neutralize its deadly effects. What they found was terrifying. The virus was resistant to all known treatments and was spreading quickly through the galaxy. As they searched for a potential cure, Max received a message from an unlikely ally. The message was from a Xalaxian queen, who claimed to hold the key to defeating the virus. She had been betrayed by her own kind and had realized the true danger that the weapon posed to the entire universe. Max and his team hesitated at first, unsure if they could trust this queen. But they knew that they had nothing to lose. They traveled to her hidden location, deep in the heart of enemy territory. The queen was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. She was strikingly beautiful, with piercing blue eyes and a serene presence that belied her immense power. She shared her knowledge with Max and his team, showing them how to create the antidote that would neutralize the virus. But the queen did not simply give them the cure. She demanded that they help her overthrow the Xalaxian Empire, and help her establish a new era of peace throughout the universe. Max and his team struggled with the weight of such a decision, unsure if they could trust her, but they knew that they had to do whatever it takes to save the galaxy. As they launched a daring attack on the Xalaxian Empire, Max and his team fought valiantly. They had to navigate through a maze of enemies and challenges, relying on all their skills and experience to survive. The battle was fierce and brutal, but in the end, Max and his team emerged victorious. The Xalaxian Queen had played her part, and her powerful influence had turned the tide of the war. She had saved the universe, and in doing so, had earned the love and admiration of all who had come into contact with her. Max and his team returned to their own time, feeling that they had accomplished what they had set out to do. They had saved the galaxy, and they would never forget the power of forgiveness and redemption that the Xalaxian Queen had shown them. Chapter 6. The Betrayal. Max and his team had enjoyed a period of relative peace and prosperity, the galaxy enjoying a newfound era of cooperation and unity. But the calm was about to be shattered once again by an unexpected betrayal. One of their own team members had turned against them, seeking to use their knowledge and resources for his own selfish gain. He had discovered a powerful new technology that would allow him to rewrite time itself, and he intended to use it to rewrite history in his own image. Max and his team were stunned by the betrayal, but they knew that they had to act quickly before their former ally could carry out his plans. They engaged in a tense and tactical game of cat and mouse, knowing that they had to prevent him from acquiring any more power that would allow him to change the course of time. With the help of an undercover agent on the inside, Max and his team were able to uncover the true depths of their former ally's plan. He intended not only to change the course of history but to eliminate anyone who stood in his path. Max and his team launched a daring raid on their former ally's secret lair, knowing that if they didn't stop him soon, the consequences would be catastrophic. The battle was brutal, and several of Max's team members were injured in the fight. In the midst of the chaos, Max found himself face to face with their former ally. He could see the madness burning in his eyes, the hunger for power that had driven him to make such a terrible decision. As they fought, Max could see the desperation setting in, his former ally realizing that he was losing the battle. But then, something unexpected happened. In a moment of clarity, their former ally realized the true cost of what he was doing. He realized that he had become the very thing that he was fighting against. With a sense of resignation, their former ally destroyed the device that he had created, ending his quest for power and sacrificing himself in the process. The battle drew to a close, the team victorious yet again, but they all felt a deep sense of loss at what had transpired. Max and his team returned to their own time, feeling the weight of the burden that they carried. They knew that as long as there were those who sought to control time, they would never be truly safe. They would always be soldiers in a never-ending war, fighting for the sanctity of history and the preservation of the universe. Chapter 7. The Endgame. Max and his team knew that they had been preparing for this moment for years. The moment when it would all come down to one final battle, the Endgame that would determine the fate of the entire universe. The stakes had never been higher. A new enemy had emerged, one that threatened to bring about the end of all life. They were known only as the Void, a shadowy organization that had the power to manipulate time itself. Their ultimate goal was unknown, but their power was immense, and they had their sights set on destroying anything that stood in their path. Max and his team knew that they were the only ones who could stop the Void. They had been training for years, honing their skills and preparing for this ultimate showdown. The fate of the universe was resting on their shoulders. They launched a coordinated attack on the Void's headquarters, hoping to catch them off guard and catch them by surprise. The Void was powerful, and they knew that they couldn't win this battle on their own. But Max and his team were not alone. They had allies from all across the universe, people who were willing to fight and die for this cause. Together, they launched a massive assault on the Void's base, the sounds of battle echoing throughout the galaxy. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides taking heavy losses. The Void was determined to win, unleashing their full arsenal of time manipulating weapons and gadgets. But Max and his team were equally determined to stop them, unleashing their own skills and expertise. As the battle drew to a close, Max found himself face to face with the leader of the Void. He could feel the intense energy radiating from him, the force of someone who had been manipulating time for centuries. Max knew that this battle would be the ultimate test of his skills and abilities. In a battle of wills and strength, Max and the Void leader fought fiercely. Max could feel his own energy fading, the toll of the battle taking its toll. But with one final burst of strength, he managed to hit the Void leader with a final blow. In that moment, the universe seemed to still. Max and his team looked around, seeing the aftermath of the war. Their allies were battered and broken, but the Void was gone, vanquished by Max and his team's relentless pursuit of truth and justice. As they returned to their own time, Max and his team knew that they had achieved the impossible. They had saved the universe, and in doing so, had earned their place in the annals of history. They had fought for what was right, and in the end, the universe had prevailed.